Hi everyone, I'm Mak Wingkit. Today I will present the ethical issue related to Apple's App Store practices, especially its anti-competitive behavior, and explain how these issues affect Apple from political, economic, social, and technological perspectives. Apple is an American multinational technology company headquartered in Cupertino, California. It was founded in 1976 by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wen. At first, Apple focused mainly on personal computers such as the Apple I and Apple II. Later, Apple became well known for products such as the Macintosh, iPod, iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, AirPods, and Mac. Today, Apple is one of the largest technology companies in the world. It operates in many countries and has a strong global supply chain, many retail stores, and a large customer base. Apple is also famous for its brand loyalty because many customers continue to use Apple products due to their quality, design, and connection with other Apple services. Apple's main business has changed significantly over time. In the beginning, Apple mainly sold computers under the Macintosh brand. However, since the early 2000s, Apple has expanded into mobile devices, wearables, accessories, and digital services. Its major products now include the iPhone, iPad, Mac, Apple Watch, AirPods, Apple TV, HomePod, and Apple Vision Pro. Besides selling hardware, Apple also earned a large amount of revenue from services. These services include the App Store, iCloud, Apple Pay, Apple Music, Apple TV, Apple Care Plus, Apple News, Apple Books, and Apple One. This shows that Apple is no longer only a hardware company. It has become a company that combines products, software, and services into one connected ecosystem. One important feature of Apple's business is this ecosystem. Apple devices and services work closely together, which create convenience for users. For example, users can connect their iPhone, Mac, iPad, Apple Watch, and iCloud account easily. However, some critics argue that this ecosystem is too close because Apple controls many parts of the platform. This can make it difficult for competitors and developers to operate freely. The main ethical issue discussed in the presentation is Apple's anti-competitive behavior in the App Store. For a long time, Apple has required many developers who distribute applications through the App Store to use Apple's own in-app payment system. Apple also charged commission of up to 30% on digital purchases and subscriptions. Many developers believe that these rules are unfair because they increase business costs. Developers were also restricted from guiding users to cheaper payment options outside the App Store. This means that consumers may have fewer choices, while developers have less freedom to decide how they want to sell their products or services. In 2025, the European Commission ruled that Apple's App Store rules violated the Digital Market Act. As a result, Apple was fined 500 million euros and was required to remove certain restrictions. The European Commission argued that Apple's policy created unfair obstacles for competitors and weakened market fairness. However, Apple disagreed with the decision. Apple argued that its App Store policies are designed to protect users' privacy, security, and overall experience. Therefore, this issue became an ethical dilemma. On one side, Apple has a responsibility to keep users safe. On the other side, Apple also has a responsibility to support fair competition, transparency, and equal company opportunities for developers. Politically, Apple's App Store practices has increased pressure from governments and regulatory agencies around the world. Because Apple is one of the largest technology companies, its business decisions do not only affect the company itself, they also affect developers, consumers, competitors, and the digital economy. Regulatory bodies in the European Union, the United States, South Korea, and Japan has investigated whether Apple's App Store policies violate fair competition laws. The 2025 European Commission ruling shows that governments are becoming more serious about controlling the power of large technology platforms. The Digital Market Act is one example of stronger digital regulation. It requires dominant digital platforms to allow more competition and prevent companies from abusing their market power. In Apple's case, this means developers should have more freedom to communicate with users and offer alternative payment methods. This issue has also encouraged greater international cooperation among regulators. Since Apple operates in many countries, regulators may share information and coordinate their actions. Overall, Apple's case has become an important example of how governments may regulate large technology companies in the future. Economically, this controversy has created several financial risks for Apple. Although Apple remains one of the most profitable technology companies in the world, ethical and legal issues can still affect its financial performance. One major economic impact is the increase in penalties and compliance costs. For example, the €500 million fine from the European Commission is a direct financial cost. Besides paying fines, Apple may also need to spend more money on legal services, regulatory compliance, internal audits, and changes to its App Store policies. Another economic effect is the possible decline in App Store revenue. Apple earns significant income from commission charged to developers. If Apple is required to allow alternative payment methods, some developers may avoid Apple's payment system. This could reduce Apple's commission income and affect one of its most profitable service areas. The issue may also affect investor confidence. Ongoing investigation and legal disputes can create uncertainty about Apple's future financial performance. At the same time, developers may feel that Apple's fee and restrictions increase their costs and limit their business opportunities. In the long term, this could reduce innovation on the platform and affect Apple's competitiveness. Socially, Apple's App Store controversy affects its reputation, brand image, and relationship with stakeholders. Apple has built a strong reputation for innovation, quality, privacy, and customer trust. However, accusation of anti-competitive behavior may damage the image of Apple as a responsible and ethical company. One important social impact is the effect on developers. Developers are very important to Apple's ecosystem because they create the application that attract users to Apple devices. If developers feel that Apple treats them unfairly through high commission fees or strict payment rules, they may lose trust in the company. Some developers may even reduce their investments in Apple's platform. Consumers are also affected. Nowadays, many consumers care about whether a company behaves ethically. Even if Apple products remain popular, continuous criticism and negative media coverage may cause some consumers to question about Apple's values. This can influence purchasing decisions and long-term customer loyalty. The controversy may also affect Apple employees. Employees usually feel more motivated when they are working for a company that is seen as responsible and ethical. If the company receives frequent public criticism, it may affect employee moral and organizational culture. Therefore, maintaining strong ethical culture is important for Apple's long-term reputation and stakeholder confidence. Technologically, Apple's strict control over the App Store has both positive and negative effects. On the positive side, Apple's rules help maintain security, privacy, and quality. By controlling the App Store, Apple can reduce the risk of harmful apps, protect user data, and provide a consistent experience for users. However, strict control can also limit innovation. Developers may feel that Apple's rules make it difficult to introduce new business models, creative services, or alternative payment systems. Smaller developers may be especially affected because they may not have enough resources to manage high fees, restrictions, and compliance requirements. Regulatory changes may also affect Apple's research and development. Apple may need to allocate more technical and engineering resources to meet legal requirements and update App Store system. This may temporarily slow down some innovation projects because resources are being used for compliance instead of product development. At the same time, these changes can also have a positive technological effect. They may encourage Apple to create a more transparent, open, and fair digital ecosystem. The main challenge for Apple is to balance innovation, security, privacy, and fair competition. If Apple handles this well, it can maintain users' trust while also supporting developers and regulators. To address these ethical issues, Apple should first improve transparency in the App Store review process, payment policies, and application approval procedures. Developers should receive clearer explanation when their applications are rejected. This would help reduce misunderstanding and improve the relationship between Apple and developers. Secondly, Apple should allow alternative payment methods where appropriate. This would give developers more flexibility and give consumers more choices. Although this may reduce Apple's commission income, it can also improve Apple's reputation and reduce the possibility of future antitrust investigations. Thirdly, Apple should cooperate more closely with governments and regulatory agencies. Since Apple operates in many countries, it must understand and follow different competition laws. Regulation, internal compliance, audits, and dedicated legal teams can help Apple reduce legal risk and also avoid future penalties. Lastly, Apple should improve communication with developers, consumers, investors, and regulators. By collecting feedback and involving stakeholders in discussions, Apple can better understand their concerns before problems become more serious. Overall, these recommendations show that ethical leadership requires more than simply following the law. It also requires transparency, fairness, and active stakeholder engagement. In conclusion, Apple's App Store practices raise important ethical concerns about fair competition, transparency, and corporate responsibility. Although Apple is still one of the world's most successful technology companies, its App Store policies have created criticism from developers, regulators, consumers, and other stakeholders. This issue has political effect because governments are increasing regulation of large technology companies. It has economic effect because Apple's forced to face fines, compliance costs, possible revenue loss, and investor uncertainty. It has social effects because the controversy can damage Apple's reputation, developer trust, customer loyalty, and employee morale. It also has technological effects because strict App Store control can both protect users and limit innovation. Overall, this case shows that ethical business practices are important for long-term success. Companies should not focus only on profit, but also on fairness, responsibility, and the trust. For Apple, the best approach is to balance profitability, innovation, user privacy, security, and fair competition. By improving transparency, supporting fair competition, complying with regulations, and engaging with stakeholders, Apple can reduce ethical concerns and strengthen its long-term reputation. Ultimately, responsible and ethical decisions can help Apple maintain its competitive advantage while creating lasting value for the company, developers, consumers, and society. That's all from my presentation, and thank you very much.